This is the help desk. No, redo it. This is the help desk after hours. Today I am building my first gaming PC. I hope this helps someone out there who's just like me and had no idea what they're doing. As we go along the way, I'll try to give you as many tips as possible. Enjoy. Right into. All right, YouTube. Starting out, I use Copilot for most of my research. I wanted something that was future-proof. That way, if I wanted to upgrade later on, when I had more money, I could. So I got an AM5 motherboard. I also wanted to be able to play Warzone at high frame rates on 1080p and or 1440p. And honestly, for my budget, it gave me pretty good results. I mean, I'm not complaining because it looks really great, and I'm getting 150 plus FPS on 1440p. Here we have the G-Skill Ripjaw DDR5 32GB RAM. More than enough for what I'm using it for. We have the Oracle 1TB NVMe M.2 SSD. You may want more if you're going to play several games. I went with the Ryzen 5 7600 series. I'm using the default fan it came with. This is the AMD CPU fan. Works great, very quiet. I went with the XFX Speedster Quick 319 RX 6750 XT Core. It's a mouthful, but it works great. I went with the Corsair RM650E fully modular power supply. You want to plug in your power supply, flip it on, and play patty cake with it to ground yourself so you don't ruin anything on the motherboard. These were something extra I bought. They're just purple and white cable extensions to match the white RGB fractal air pop case that I got. I also went with the MSI Mag B650 Tomahawk Wi-Fi motherboard. Now, whenever you're putting in the CPU, it's going to be kind of hard to get that clip off. Just be firm with it and make sure you line up your CPU with the marker on your motherboard. Once you get it in there, slide it, make sure it doesn't jiggle much, and then be firm when you put the clip back down. Save that black plastic piece though, in case you have to send in your motherboard for repair of any kind. And be gentle with the bottom side of your CPU or the top side of the motherboard where the CPU goes in. You do not want to bend any of those pins. Be sure to use slot 2 and 4 on your motherboard for your RAM if you have 2 sticks. That way you get the dual channel mode and boost performance. On the SSD, a little tip is go in at an angle. If you try to lay it flat and slide it in there, it's not going to want to go in there. Also, whenever you put it on and tighten it down, don't tighten it too tight. Mine had a screw with a black plastic piece to hold it on there. I noticed the tighter I got, it actually started bending the SSD a bit. So tighten it down, just not too tight. Here we have some thermal tape. It did come with the SSD. Just be sure to remove both sides of plastic whenever you do put it on. On to the CPU fan. These are, I think, they're thread protectors. I could be wrong, but just remove them. I don't see any reason to keep them, and that's where your CPU fan is going to screw into. And for the fun part, this is thermal paste to keep your CPU cool. Be sure to put a little on before you screw in your CPU fan. How can I make a YouTube video without a little shiny paste? On to the CPU fan. If your fan looks different, be sure to aim the ugly side towards the rear of your case or the exhaust hole on your case. The pretty side is going to face the front of your case, and it pulls air through and pushes it out the back towards the heatsink. Another tip is when you're tightening down your CPU fan, Do a little bit on one side and a little bit on the other side, and keep doing that. That way it goes down evenly and you're not tightening one side all at once. Be sure to read over your motherboard manual to figure out which port is for which part. My fan header on the motherboard was named CPU fan. The hardest part of all of this, I must say, was figuring out which cable went to what. The white lettering on the power supply cables went to the motherboard, and the gray lettering on the power supply cables went to the power supply itself. I used the box that the power supply came with to figure out which cable went to what, and I also did research using Copilot and Google to make sure I was correct so I didn't blow anything up. Unfortunately, my case has not arrived yet, and I have all these cool little parts in front of me. So let's go ahead and put it all together, test that it's working, install Windows, and run all the updates. Let's connect the GPU, CPU power supply 1, CPU power supply 2, the motherboard power supply, and the GPU power supply. Let's remove the display port cover, flip on the power supply, and touch the 2 pins to power on the PC. You can find which 2 pins to touch in your motherboard manual. I will show you a screenshot of my manual later on in the video. The first boot might take a bit. Mine was actually fairly quick. Once it booted up, it took me right into BIOS. There I confirmed I could see the CPU and the temp wasn't too high. I then went and enabled resize bar, which is a feature that lets your CPU access your GPU memory or VRAM all at once. Now I'm looking for EXPO. It's a BIOS setting that lets your RAM run at its advertised speed. Now we want to look for the boot order. That way we can install Windows from our USB flash drive. Now that I've changed the boot order, I am disabling Secure Boot before I install Windows. That way I don't run into any issues. I do recommend re-enabling this upon installation. Alright, now it's time to install Windows. Select Next, Next. I check the little box, make sure you have Install Windows selected. Hit Next. Select I don't have a product key, and then select your Windows install. I recommend Windows 11 Home. You can also do Windows 11 Pro. It is up to you. Hit Next, Next. Now it's going to show us a list of available disks to install Windows on. We want to select our SSD. Mine is 1 terabyte, so I'm selecting the one that is closest to the size of 1 terabyte. Continue to follow the prompts until you get to the internet screen, and you can do a little trick to bypass the rest of these. You simply press Shift plus F10 or Fn plus Shift plus F10 to open a command prompt. Now type in net.exe user, enter the username, mine's admin, enter the password, mine is also admin, /add, and hit enter. Now same thing, net.exe, now enter local group and type in the group name, which in our case is administrators. Enter the username, in my case it is admin, /add, hit enter. Now we want to type cd space OOBE, which stands for change directory, and it changes to the OOBE directory. Now we enter msoobe.exe &sign shutdown.exe-r. Hit enter, your computer will then reboot, and you should get the login screen. You will most likely get the username or password is incorrect. Just hit OK and then enter the password of the user you just created. Now we just need to connect to the internet to install updates. I'm using a wireless network adapter, If you have an Ethernet cable, I recommend using that. My motherboard has Wi-Fi, but there's no drivers, so it was not working. If yours is doing the same thing and you have no wireless adapter, I recommend getting a USB flash drive, downloading the drivers onto the flash drive, and moving it over to your computer. Now that we're online, we just need to install our motherboard software, which in my case was MSI Center. Using MSI Center, I am able to update the motherboard with a firmware update and the other drivers it needs to operate correctly. So here I am just going through the steps to install MSI Center. I've never used MSI Center before, so I selected everything I thought pertained to me, and on the next screen I left everything checked that was checked by default, and then I searched for how to install the BIOS update, and it was under the Live Update tab, and then I selected Advanced, but you can just select Scan. It's up to you. I don't think it's a big difference. From there, I installed each update I had, which was a BIOS update and RGB light update. Now we just need to let the BIOS update, and then upon reboot, let's install our GPU software. In my case, mine was AMD, so I installed AMD Adrenalin software, and from there, it will search for the updates you need. I installed all the default updates it had selected. Okay, case has arrived. Now it's time to put this bad boy together. Whenever you screw in your power supply, I recommend treating it like a tire or your CPU fan, and screw in one side a little at a time. That way it screws in evenly. So it's recommended to daisy chain your fan cables and your fan light cables. If you don't know what goes to which, I recommend plugging in what will plug in. So if one has 3 ports and the other plug has 3 pins, they are going to plug in together. That's what I did, and later on I read the case manual and figured out which one went to the fan. It actually didn't have an image of the fan light plug. Here's the case manual, and it only shows you what the fan connectors look like, not the fan light connectors. This is a motherboard manual showing you what the headers are labeled as. With this information and of course a little bit of research, I was able to figure out where each part plugged into. Now let's plug in the fan to the motherboard. I'm using the daisy chain cable, so there's only one connector to plug in. Now let's connect the fan RGB lights. Here I am plugging in the fan power supply and the fan RGB power supply. It's just one cable and it connects to the SATA adapter, which then plugs into your power supply. Now let's connect the USB cable that goes to the two USB-A ports on top of the case. Now let's connect the HD audio, which goes to the audio jack on top of the case. Here's another screenshot of the motherboard manual showing me which two pins I need to plug the power button connector into. Now let's connect the power button cable. It's kind of hard to see, but I'm trying to give you a close-up of each cable I plugged into the motherboard. Now let's connect the two CPU power supply cables. Now let's connect the motherboard power supply cable. Getting the GPU in there was a pain. I recommend laying the case on its side. And also, whenever you get it in there, make sure the metal bracket is on the inside of the case. It wants to go on the outside sometimes, but you're not going to get it in if it's not on the inside of the case. Yours may be different, but that's just a quick tip that would have helped me. Last but not least, let's connect the two GPU power supply cables. One of the final steps is cable management. You kind of want to shove it all in the bottom there next to the power supply, and then clean up whatever you can with zip ties or Velcro strips. With this case, the panels go in at an angle, and then you push it up against the case and slide it forward. There you have it. How to build a gaming PC with absolutely zero knowledge on building gaming PCs. Just use Copilot and Google and YouTube and you should be alright. And hit the like button.